Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Catalyst webinar series presented by the Southern California PGA Section Education Committee. The Catalyst webinar series is a bi-weekly educational platform where PGA members can gain valuable information as to the many hats and experiences that are in this wonderful business. I want to welcome Andy Hiltz this morning, who is the Vice President of Education for GolfTEC. Andy Hiltz is a Master PGA professional. He is the 2005 Colorado PGA Teacher of the Year. He is also the recipient of the 2008-2015 Colorado PGA Horton Smith Award, as well as the 2009 and 2013 Golf Digest Top Young Teachers Under 40. Good morning, Andy. Welcome to the Catalyst webinar series.
Thanks for having me. Sucks being over 40, as we were talking before, right, John? So seriously, thanks for having me. Great to be here and share a bit of the GolfTEC story. Love to make this obviously as interactive as we possibly can. I've got the chat window open, so if anybody has any questions as we roll through, whether it's about GolfTEC and our business or any swing questions, happy to share any of that. Thanks for the introduction, though, John, and look forward to providing hopefully some good nuggets for everybody. So let's get ripping here and get going in. Really want to just start off with, I'll say just some, I think, semi-scary times for us in the golf business, and I'm sure you guys pay attention to the news like I do. We're in a tough spot right now. We're not seeing a lot of growth in our game. In fact, we've seen a lot of, quite frankly, dip in our game, and this golfer bubble is certainly a scary thing. Not only in just our business at GolfTEC, we feel we're very relatively discretionary inside of a discretionary business, but just globally in the golf business, this is scary for us, and we got to find ways to fix this. And it's my contention that I don't think continuing to discount our services and discount our skills is the right way to grow. I think we need to help people play better golf, and that really is, quite frankly, our core mission at GolfTEC is to do just that, is to help people play better golf. And I think as PGA professionals, that's one of the most important things that we can do to grow the game. And there's all kinds of studies out there. I just read one actually from Pellucid that talked about if we could take a stroke off every single person's average score, it would be $1.7 billion in incremental business for golf. That would be a 10% lift for our industry. And from my perspective, I like hearing numbers like that. I like hearing that if we can get people better, statistically, we know they participate more in golf. The other one I love sharing here, I want to show you guys real quick, is one from the NGF, the National Golf Foundation. And this one, to me, says a lot of the same things. And if you read this real quick, I'll freeze my screen for a second so it's not moving. Core golfers, 8 or more rounds annually, all things considered, just rate your passion for golf, right? 0 is no thanks, and 10 is extremely passionate. Average 18-hole score, correlation from there. What they found was the higher the passion, the better the score. And this is, hopefully this is obvious to all of us, from our own personal play in the game. The better we played, or for me, and I think everybody, the better I played as a kid, the more I wanted to play. And we can see it with this, a very perfect correlation here, that the more people play better, the better people play, the more they tend to play. And then the spend goes up across the entire, gamut, from obviously that round played to what they're going to spend in food and beverage, what they're going to spend in the shop on merchandise, et cetera, et cetera. And, kind of to finish this, I love the last little section here. Once they break 100 regularly, and once their score under 90, their passion level goes up to the 9 and 10 range. And that really is, the primary demographic that we deal with at GolfTEC a lot. Our average person walks in the door shooting 97. So really at that stage where they're ready to become very, very passionate about the game. So that's, I guess, my soapbox, if you will. I think we need to help people play better golf, and there's no better person to do that than the PGA professional. Give you just a bit of a scale of and scope of our business. I just I don't know what everyone knows about what we do and where we are and who we are and kind of where we've come from. We started here in Denver, Colorado, Cherry Hills Country Club in the basement using a motion system. Clayton Cole, who's been a PGA professional for many, many, many years and a mentor to so many, a national award winner, he had an idea to try to help take some of the opinion out of golf instruction and make it more fact-based. And he did so through a motion system that actually came from, I think it's Sentinella Hospital there in Los Angeles, a motion system that they were using to measure patients' rehabs and how did this surgery and this rehab increase range of motion, et cetera, et cetera. And Clayton took that system and essentially put it in the basement at Cherry Hills. This was 23 years ago, and the members loved it. He also then got connected with Health South and was able to do a study of tour players. And essentially that gave us our core foundation of our teaching, which is our tour averages. Tour average, we believe, very strongly in what the best players in the world are doing, and mimicking that. And not saying you have to swing exactly like Tiger Woods or Jason Day or Jordan Spieth, but hey, here's the average, and this average includes Jim Furyk and Ernie Els and Annika Sorenstam and Natalie Gulbis, and we've got all these different players that really essentially give us our foundation to be more fact-based. So growing from Cherry Hills Country Club to here in the Denver Tech Center to now, you can see a couple hundred locations worldwide, and we're seeing a really nice growth trend for us around the world. Actually, right now, Canada was the first country we went into. Obviously, makes it very easy just from a language perspective. From there, we went into South Korea and Japan. Right now, we currently opened in Hong Kong in September, and we're slated to open in Singapore here in the next couple of months. So some great international growth. Dubai coming online here sometime, we believe, in the next year as well. And then obviously Australia and Europe are markets that we're interested in continuing in as we continue to grow around the country. And I want to share, I'm not a big chains guy. I'm not a big McDonald's guy. I don't like billions and billions served, generally speaking. John and I were talking about that before everybody got on the call today. But want to give you some perspective on how many lessons we're actually teaching right now. Last year, 2016, we taught just shy of 900,000 lessons, which is just a staggering number of golf instruction, from putting lessons to chipping lessons to full swing lessons, and that whole gamut. And for me, the piece that I'm most proud of about that number is not the number, it's the success we've continued to have. And how we measure our success, we do it via our customer survey, our student survey that we send out every fall, and we ask them a question about rate your level of improvement since starting to take lessons at GolfTEC. And the answers are playing the best golf of my life, feel like I'm on track to playing the best golf of my life, or GolfTEC just has destroyed my game, or no improvement whatsoever. And 96% of the people answer one of those first two, of playing the best golf of my life, or feel like I'm on the right track to playing better golf as well. So we call that our 96% success rate, and you guys all know the more you do, the more production there is, the more burgers McDonald's produces. Generally I would say the quality tends to go down. So just super excited to be able to maintain a success rate that we've had forever as we've begun to teach more and more lessons. I mentioned a few minutes ago that our average student coming in shoots 97 over a course of a year. Or a year's worth of golf lessons, our students improve on average 7 strokes. So we take them from 97 down to 90. And that's really when the exponential increase in their participation just takes off. And for me, that's, I love being in this position in golf where we can truly help people play better and know when they play better, they play more, which is, helps us, all of us, improve. The TEC, we try to be as holistic as possible in helping them around our core mission of helping people play better golf, of focusing on the areas that we believe are the most impactful in doing so. And technique, equipment, and conditioning, really all three of those things we believe in are some of the most important things in helping them play the best golf possible. Right now we're currently at about 650 certified personal coaches. I believe 450-ish right now are PGA professionals as well. We obviously believe very strongly in employing PGA professionals. Our founders and co-founders are all PGA professionals as well, so something that's very important and dear to our heart. I want to give you a bit of an idea of just the technology that we use, and hopefully this is, I'm not boring too many out there, but just want to give you a little bit of the scope of our business and what we're doing, and try to give you a good education as to, as to what we believe in. So we use some technology of our own, and then some technology that's proprietary to somebody else. Obviously, Foresight in an indoor environment is an incredible tool. Allows us to measure what's happening, at high speeds, which, from my perspective, with my 20+ years of teaching golf, probably the single best development in technology. The ability with TrackMan and Foresight to be able to measure things at such a high speed and get incredible accuracy with what's happening is just amazing. And if I had to list out the technologies that I would use as a coach right now, if I was using nothing and I was trying to get started with something, I would put a launch monitor very high on that list, followed up by video. Video is such a powerful tool for the student to connect, feel, and real. I've heard a lot of guys say, oh, it confuses people. I get it. I totally get it. When I was young and didn't know what I was doing with these technologies, I'm sure I confuse people. I know I confuse people. So it's our job to get better at those things, to pick out the one or two items that is important to their golf swing and their golf improvement, and work on those pieces versus trying to give them the whole thing. So I get that. That said, these two tools, if I could have someone just use those things in golf instruction, we'd be in a really good spot. We add to it our motion analysis. Like I mentioned before, we've had some pros come in and get measured, and we've added them to our tour average. And again, you don't need to be exactly the tour average, but that gives us a good baseline to start. And we get a lot of people that come in and say, oh, I can't swing like a tour player. I get it. Neither can I. But we can certainly mimic some of those fundamentals. And one of the analogies I use of when you get guys like that come into our centers, they're usually getting tips from their buddies. And I ask them, so what are your buddies shooting right now? Oh, they shoot about 90. Okay, got it. Well, just help me understand this for a second. If you were going to go in to swim, would you watch Michael Phelps, or would you watch a guy who's dog paddling, barely trying to keep his head afloat? Hopefully you'd watch Michael Phelps and mimic what he's doing, and not somebody who's practically drowning at this point, because your buddies shooting 90 or 100 or 120, whatever, they're not doing very well. They're not swimming very well at this point in time, and wouldn't you want to try to mimic the person who's doing this fundamentally the right way? And that's, to me, is just our core philosophy just revolves around that tour average. So taking it outdoors, though, is a huge key. I think you guys, I'm sure you've seen over the years, when you take someone from an indoor to an outdoor environment, that's the most challenging step. And taking them from indoor to range, and then range to the first tee, absolutely the tough stuff to do. To help that process, we obviously take video outside as well. And we utilize our own iPad app we call Tech Swing Go to transition from indoors to out. We also believe heavily that our students need to go review and go practice the things that they were taught in the lessons. So we build what we call a web lesson for them to go back and review after their experience, whether it was on the range outside, whether it was indoors, whether it was a putting lesson on the putting green at Golf Galaxy or Golf Smith. We want our students to go review their lessons so they can improve and increase their level of retention. Kind of shift gears a little bit and hopefully get into some stuff that's maybe a little more exciting. I think people generally like talking about golf swings versus just the golf business itself. So tons of data over the course of 20 years of being in business, or 22 years I think is where we're at now, once we got out of the basement at Cherry Hills and started in our first improvement center in the Denver Tech Center. Had a lot of golf swings, obviously. We estimate that it's about 90 million swings have been taken in a GolfTEC bay, 15 million of which we've captured with motion analysis. We did this last year, really the first big study on motion that we've ever done, and it was something that I was incredibly excited to do, and learned a ton of things by doing this. And we really didn't know what to expect, but we started off with just a correlation assessment, if you will, and this accurate diagnosis to me is really where I want to kind of focus on the rest of our time today for another 20 minutes or half hour or so. So what we did was we took a study of essentially two keys. So number one, the motion measurements, obviously, that we captured in a bay, and then number two, we took the person's handicap, and we did a correlation study and found that there were some motion measurements that were incredibly highly correlated to success. Meaning the lower the player's handicap, the closer and closer and closer they got to the tour average. And then the higher the player's handicap, the farther and farther they got from the tour average as well. And this was, we didn't do all 15 million swings. We did a study of 30,000 golf swings in this one, 30,000 different people and different golf swings. So it wasn't 15 million, but still a very, statistically significant sample size. And I want to go through with you guys just some of the things that we found. And really, I guess before I do, just one quick story about accurate diagnosis. This was really, I was telling John before, what attracted me to GolfTEC almost 18 years ago when I first graduated from Mississippi State. And really, to me, it was the accurate diagnosis piece that was the first hook that got set into me. And not to bore with a personal story, but my first experience was in a classroom at Mississippi State. We were hitting a duct tape golf ball to get the sound of impact so we could record the impact data. And they were just measuring our golf swings. And we had 50 of us. They were trying to get done in an hour. And it took about a minute and a half free, so obviously we ran a little bit long. But I got hooked up, took one quick swing. I had no time with Mike Clinton, who was our co-founder. Mike looked at my data, never even looked at my golf swing on video, just looked at the data, and he picked out my two core frustrations. And for years, I had worked with golf professionals and PGA professionals on my golf swing, and I always had the same frustrations. And it was always, once I got good, once I was breaking 80, it was hitting it solid. It was hitting the center of the club face as frequently as I possibly could, and I did not hit the center of the club face very well. And then the second frustration for me was every once in a while, about once a semester, I'd catch the shanks, and it was painful, and not a good thing when you're trying to be breaking 80 all the time. Mike's looked at me, I looked at my dad, I looked at me and said, "I'll bet you don't hit it very solid, do you?" And I was like, "Nope." And the second thing he said was, "How often do you catch the shanks?" And for him to understand that from just looking at my data blew me out of the water. And how did you know that? Quite simply, here's your hip turn at impact, here's your shoulder tilted impact, here's your shoulder bended impact. All of those are significantly far away from the tour average. You're early extending, here's what it causes. It causes a very challenging time hitting solid shots, and it causes a very, very challenging time catching the shanks. Blew me away, and that really was what drew me initially to GolfTEC, quite frankly, and fun to see things evolve to where we are now with this Swing True study. So here's one of the first positions, and one of the most highly correlated to success that we found is hip sway at the top of the backswing. And in talking about hip sway, the first thing to really be aware of and understand is this measurement. When it says towards, I'm not saying move your hips towards the target. What I'm saying is that sensor that sits on the back end of the hips, basically on the tailbone, as you turn that sensor, because the hips are an ellipse, if you're turning around a centered point within the middle of the hip girdle, if you will, the sensor moves towards the target. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody to start. Again, I'm not saying move your hips towards the target. What I'm saying is that sensor will move towards the target if you turn around a centered point. What we found with hip sway at the top of the backswing is that the tour average is 3.9 inches towards. So from address to the top of the backswing, that sensor that sits on the back of the tailbone moves 3.9 inches towards the target on average. As you go higher in handicap, that sensor moves less and less and less towards the target. It moves more away from the target. And this is, you guys have all seen this. This is not, this is not revolutionary by any means. That, hey, oh my gosh, people sway their hips. Yeah, I've been watching that forever. But this hip sway correlation to me is incredibly powerful. That this is one of the most important factors in getting somebody to play better, most highly correlated factors in getting someone to play better golf. Next thing that we did a couple of months ago was build this heat map. And I'm by no means an expert in heat maps, but the dark red area is the area of very high density. And what this tells us is that people who have a lower handicap, getting down to that 0 handicap, tend to be very, very, very tightly grouped around this area of hip sway. They don't sway way away from their target or way towards their target. Whereas you go higher in the handicap, we see a general curve to swaying more away, or call it less towards the target, and there really isn't a very tight pattern there. I mean, they're all over the place with their inconsistencies. Some move too far towards the target, some move too far away. So a fun one to look at. Again, not a revolutionary, move that none of us have ever seen before, but again, one that's very, very highly correlated to success. And move on to the next one, and it's actually hip sway at impact. And as you look at this one, again, incredible correlation here. Tour average of 1.6 towards, so from where the sensor started at address to where it is at impact, it's moved 1.6 inches towards the target. Now, as the hips turn more, if they stayed centered and didn't move at all, that number would start to read more away, just again, because the sensor is placed on the outside of that ellipse, and as they turn more, the sensor moves more away. But because of that lateral movement and the rotation, we get to a tour average of 1.6 towards. You look at the higher handicap players, again, they're moving more away. In that 30 handicap zone, we're seeing them actually 0.4 inches away from the target, so moving further and further away. And you start talking, one of the things that we spend a lot of our time on here in our training and working with our coaches and our students is correlating this to what's a cause. So really building the cause effect. Okay, you're swaying your hips poorly in the backswing, and then they stay working away from your target in the downswing and in the impact. What's that going to affect? And generally speaking, we see this one really, really affecting the low point of the golf swing, or where that divot happens. And I think we all know our job security is people that hit it fat and people that slice it. If we can get people to stop slicing the golf ball and get them to hit it more solid, we are going to create players that enjoy the game a lot more. And if they enjoy the game more and they score better, obviously we already talked about what that's going to do for all of us. It's going to grow the game and get more rounds played. So in practical application of this one, did a quick study, and very, very fun to use some different things out there. We actually use this device. You can see the player hitting off of it, called the Smart Ball. And if you watch it, the swing's going to be hard to see. You can see a pretty common swing, a little over the top, a little bit of a pull fade in a lot of cases, and some hip sway struggles. So we basically took 10 students, handicaps range anywhere from 2 to 35, had them take their normal swing, and then had them take swings with their sways more towards the target. We then used this Smart Ball to help us identify where their low point was. And really a pretty cool thing, probably hard to see on the slide, but there's a little arrow on the side of the screen here. That's where the ball is placed. And then there's lights down here in this black strip that light up to show where the low point of the swing was. All the green lights are towards the target, obviously a good divot pattern. All the red lights are away from the target. And as you look at the results of this, again, green being good, red, yellow being not so good, hitting the ball after they hit the ground, which we see fat shots all day long. You can see some of the results. So the 35 handicap had 13 less lights, meaning their low point moved much, much more forward in front of the golf ball, right? I know, Bobby Clamp hit an impact zone. He talks about that all the time, getting that low point. I think he says 4 inches ahead of the golf ball. You can see their 17 handicap, 8 lights less, much more solid strike of the golf ball. And our 2 handicap, obviously 3 lights less. So we're seeing better and better contact when we get their hip sway sensor and the hip sway measurement to stay more towards the target. So a huge one, and one that's, again, not a revolutionary new motion that we haven't seen before, but one that's very, very highly correlated to success and very, very highly correlated to the low point of the golf swing. So on average, again, they're hitting the golf ball 8 lights closer to the target, which is going to produce tons better contact for them. I want to move into a couple other different motion sensors. Shoulder bend and the follow-through is one that was very, very highly correlated to success. The tour average there, you can see 32 degrees of backwards bend. It's essentially about where this line is at, rough and tough, to give you an idea of what that bending backwards looks like in someone's golf swing. The old reverse C position would be even more back. Michelle Wee, very, very backwards bent in her follow-through type position. Certainly, you can go too far that way as well. You can go on both sides of that spectrum, which absolutely we can see here as you look at the heat graph for this. The better players, very, very tightly correlated or tightly packed around this zone of between, call it 30 back and 25 back in their follow-through. Whereas the higher handicap players, generally speaking, they trend to less backwards bend. They try to keep their eye on the golf ball. We've all heard that one before. Keep your head down, and keeping their head down doesn't allow their spine to extend, and from there makes it very, very challenging to get them to rotate properly. And that, from my perspective, is one of the huge keys in generating speed. If you stay in this forward flexed position where you're bending more forward with your chest, very, very challenging to get your body to rotate significantly at a pretty high speed. This one also helps control the low point of the swing as well. When people stay in that forward flexed position, it's very, very challenging for the arms to extend properly post-impact. We see a lot of our players, when they stay forward flexed with their upper body and their chest, we see the flip chicken wing, which, again, job security for us. We got to stop those chicken wings and stop that flipping action, and getting their spine to extend will allow their arms the room to stay extended as well. And obviously there's a balance here of early extending. We don't want to get you to just be all the way backwards at impact, but your body has to be working that direction to help you rotate faster and really to allow those arms to extend fully from impact all the way through to the follow-through and so on and so forth. I do want to share real quick. This is one for me that kind of fires me up a little bit, and no offense against Johnny Miller. Johnny's great. Obviously, a phenomenal career. Certainly is a very polarizing figure on the or in the booth, as is Brandel Chambly. What I wanted to talk about here, though, this is some images of Johnny when he was playing some pretty good golf. Obviously, best player in the world there in the mid-'70s. And the bottom picture is Johnny on the Golf Channel, what was it, maybe 5-6 months ago. And Johnny was talking about bowing down to it. Players have to bow down to it and stay in this bowed down position through impact and into his follow-through. And I watching that, and I'm like, well, Johnny, honestly, that doesn't look like really what you did. And my question to him would be, why are we trying to teach people to do something that you didn't do to produce the best golf ever played by him? Everyone see the disconnect there for me? And I see this all the time on the Golf Channel, and I'm not pointing at Michael or Martin. Those guys are great guys. I see it with just different people out there who truly aren't basing their instruction in fact. And that's where I feel it's so important to have measurements and have data and base our belief structure around fact and not just opinion. This is Johnny's opinion, and it wasn't even what Johnny did. If you look at where Johnny would have been, just looking at the video, rough and tough, he'd be somewhere in that 30 back range, right? Johnny in the green shot over here where he's on the Golf Channel, he's 20 forward with his shoulder bent at this point in time. So what he's trying to teach people to do, to me, is not going to help them play better golf at the fastest pace possible. And it just continues to, exacerbate our problem in golf instruction right now of getting people to play better golf. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. This is one of the ones that fires me up significantly. And I want to, I guess, keep going a little bit more on this one, too, and talk about one of the myths that's out there. As you look at the tight range of handicaps, very highly, densely populated in that area, to me, this starts to really dispel some of the myths and things that kind of bug me and drive me nuts. I don't agree when I hear the Dick's advertisements say, just swing your swing. Why would you tell someone that if they're shooting 120? Your swing doesn't work. Don't swing your swing. Come get some help. Come find a PGA professional and let's get you not swinging your 120 shooting swing. And let's get you with a golf swing that's going to produce better results. And this heat graph to me also tends or allows us to help dispel some of the myths that, your swing is a snowflake. Everyone's swing is different, right? I don't agree with that. Now, to a point, yeah, there are some differences. The rhythms and tempos are a little different from Freddie Couples to Ernie Els to Nick Price and Brent. Yeah, there certainly are some differences in their positions. But I think over the last 15, 20 years, you're seeing less and less and less anomalies out there. There's less Bubbas. There's less Jim Furyk's. There's less Lee Trevino's, because we've learned through technology that there is a better, more efficient way to swing the golf club. And we need to, I think, as an industry, help stop some of the confusion, help stop some of the things that are creating, to me, golfers that are going to have a harder time getting better at the fastest pace possible. And this is just one that I fires you up a little bit, so apologize if I'm too much on my soapbox, but it's one I wanted to share. I think it's to me, if there's a couple messages to take away, that would be one of them, is we need to be good coaches, and we need to not just be throwing out things that aren't based in fact. Talk about one of the other motion measurements here. This is really one that helps with swing path. So the path of the club, obviously, we see working outside to in, working more to the left, which again just exacerbates that slice even more that we see every single day. That curvature of the golf ball is really the path to face relationship. It's the path working more out to in and the face being open relative to that path. We can fix that path or help fix that path. Obviously, tons of things that cause a bad swing plane. From a body perspective, this is certainly one of them. We see our students without enough shoulder tilt coming down, getting that right shoulder lower to help the club path work more inside to out. Another one highly correlated to success is how much their body turns. Obviously, getting their hips to rotate at a faster pace is certainly an important key. And then more open at impact, tour average there 36 degrees open versus the average 30 handicap we see at 19 degrees open. Again, very, very hot area on the graph here where things are densely populated or more densely populated in that lower handicap area when their hips turn more and more and more at impact. And I believe this is the last slide I've got, the shoulder tilt at the top of the backswing, changing your position to the ground, changing your posture, as many people have called it, losing your inclination to the ground, however you want to phrase that, is certainly one that's going to make it very, very challenging to strike the golf ball solidly. The more you raise up out of posture, the more and more difficulty you're going to have in hitting the center of the club face every time. And we see that, again, a very good correlation here that the players who tilt closer to the tour average are generally going to be at a lower handicap in their game. So that's all I've got. Happy to take any questions about GolfTEC. We've got another webinar. I'll give you the little plug for another webinar. I wanted to talk just some of our more teaching side of our business today, really introduce everyone to some of our tour averages and our study of Swing True, and really trying to, again, base our instruction on as much fact as we can. Next time, I believe it's in June, I want to do one more on the business side of things and more on what it takes to really take a coaching mentality to your instruction and what it means to really be a coach on the business side of things. We talk a lot about two key things to succeed here at GolfTEC. You got to block and tackle. You got to block and tackle, and that's really obviously important in football. For us, the blocking and tackling is teaching, and it's also selling. We have to sell our services to teach golf lessons, and again, to see the success that we've seen of a year's worth of golf lessons to take off 7 strokes, I'm not an advocate of one-off lessons. I'm much more of an advocate of a consistent coach who's there for my long-term improvement, not just a lesson here and there whenever I feel like it's time for me to go get a little tip from the pro. I think that's really important for all of us to begin to shift our philosophy around golf instruction from teaching to being a coach. So next time, as a little plug for our next webinar in June. Looking forward to that. Happy to take any questions though. Right now, I've got the chat window open here. I'm sure John, I don't know if there's a different way you can see questions, but happy to take anything that we've got.
Well, thank you very much. Excuse me. Thank you very much, Andy, for your presentation. A few questions here. Can you talk a little bit more about the smart ball and how it works in relation to the lighted meter? Those two slides there, the smart ball slide and the one right behind it. Can you put a little color on those?
Yeah, let me. I think this is this is probably the best one to look at to start with here. I assume that's the right one to start with. So there's if you look at obviously the player's feet are going to be at the top of the screen here. You can see our fiber-built mat. That was where the player was standing on. So the mat itself, much like a lie board, you don't want the ball to be on the back side of the lie board. That was my first concern in using this, was someone's going to whack the back edge of this mat. It's not the biggest mat. It's probably, I'd say, 20 inches, guessing in total length where the turf is at. It's certainly decent enough for most players. I probably wouldn't put a 40 handicap on this, but most players are able to control their low point within more than a foot behind the golf ball. They typically don't hit it that chunky. When they strike a golf ball, there are sensors in the upper part down here and then the lower part that light up when the club is essentially blocking those sensors. So if they're hitting it, fat by 10 inches, all the red lights on this black strip are going to light up. If they strike it well, meaning ball first contact, you're going to see basically green sensors from where the ball is at forward towards the target. So it'll be, red is bad, green is good, which really goes into our, we like this as a training aid. We color code our tour averages that you guys heard me talk a lot about today. Green being very close to the tour average or within a few degrees either side of it, yellow being a few more degrees away from it, and then red being further and further away. There are tour players that have red numbers for us, but for us it helps at least give us a good way to just start looking at this golf swing. What are the red ones? What are the ones we got to fix first? That's why we like this as a device, because it has that red, yellow, green. Red, hitting it fat, you got no chance, right? Yellow, we're getting closer to green, we've got some success. So you can see this other picture here. You can kind of see the red, yellow, green. You can see the arrow is essentially right here. Do I have an annotation tool here? I think I do. Let me see if I can do a highlighter. Right here is where the arrow is at. Nice little webinar trick there. So anything forward is going to be hitting the ball first, making good contact. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. What is that a branded GolfTEC teaching aid, or is that something that's available on the market?
Available on the market. Nothing branded at all about it. We use a lot of different training aids. This one's obviously, I can't remember what the price is, but I think it's smartball.com, I think is what the website is. So yeah, you can absolutely go get this one. We, probably more than you want to hear, we get calls every day about guys that have mortgaged their homes to try to push a training aid that really is, if you go to the PGA show, you're, what is it, 90% gimmicky stuff and 10% that's actually legitimate. Maybe that's a little bit aggressive. Maybe it's 80-20, but I like this one a lot. We believe heavily in training aids. We use a lot of them in our business. If it can help somebody feel the right position and they can take it with them to help feel the right position when they're not in the presence of a coach, sign me up. I'm all in for that. And there's a ton of great ones. I don't want to bash training aids. There's a ton of great ones, and they come to us wanting to brand training aids, and we just haven't gone down that path yet of taking on anyone and branding it. There's been some like what's the practice stick? What's that thing called? It has the alignment rods. It has a stretching pole all at once. What is that thing called? He's done some work where he puts the GolfTEC sticker on the outside of it and wants us to sell it, but we haven't gone down that path yet, so maybe too much information there. But
no, do you have, in terms of, do you have an example of a tour player who has a red number?
Yeah, Jim Furyk would be a good example. So Jim Furyk, at impact, his hips were 63 degrees open. Tour average is 36 degrees open. So Furyk, you're red, stop doing that. And that, for us, it's one of the things, a great question, by the way, and there's a bunch of them out there. Michelle Wee, blazing red in her finish. She turns so much past the tour average, like 170 degrees on her shoulders, where the tour average there is 136. So she's, 40 degrees past the tour average, which then gets her bend and tilt of her shoulders to be totally off the tour average. So we blaze in red in her follow-through. And from an instruction perspective, that's where we want to train our coaches to look. The red, yellow, green should not be your, I have got to fix this. This red number is going to kill their golf game. No. You got some of the best players in the world that are blazing red in certain positions. You have to understand the cause effect of those. And with Jim Furyk, if you stopped his hip turn, you'd kill him, right? And that's where, for us, when they come in, it isn't just about looking at the data and saying, oh my God, your swing's all red, we got to fix all these things. It's about looking at the results. And Furyk would be a wonderful example of when he came in as a student, let's have you hit some shots on foresight, and let's see what the miss pattern is. Let's see what's causing you to not shoot the scores you want to shoot. And obviously, Ferrick's shooting some pretty good scores, right? I mean, 58 last time I checked is pretty doggone good. And let's go figure out though what causes that particular miss for him, right? And go fix that particular miss versus trying to fix all these different things that are red. I guess I'll say one more thing on that too. I think generally speaking, and this is so I heard someone else say this, and I thought it was just genius. Those tour players are hitting millions of golf balls, right? They can have fundamentally flawed swings and practice through that and learn to develop a repeatable move, even though it isn't stylistically pretty. You could argue that our amateurs that sit at a desk for 8 hours a day, don't really practice effectively, if at all, would need better fundamentals, would be more of a pretty tour-like, stylistically gorgeous golf swing to produce good results, right? And that makes a lot of sense to me. I don't, my average 40 handicapper who's not as talented athletically as a Jim Furyk is or a Bubba Watson is, he needs to have a better fundamentally sound golf swing. So anyway, just my 2 cents, but I heard that from somebody else and I thought it made a lot of sense. So.
No, indeed. What do you say to the student who is apprehensive about taking lessons indoors where they can't see the ball flight?
Oh, love that. We get that question all the time. And my first response 15 years ago when we didn't have good launch monitors was, hey, we'll take care of the ball flight if we get the swing right. I can see what the path of the club is doing, what the face of the club is doing, and if we can measure both those things, which we did 15 years ago with a device called the TEK mat. It was GolfTEC, but it was GolfTEC TEK. Measured ball poorly, but measured the club very, very well. And if I can measure the club, I can tell you what it's going to do. And quite honestly, I want to take ball flight away from you initially, because if we make a significant change in your golf swing, it's probably not going to feel very good the first few swings, and you're not going to hit it good. And as a young coach, for me, when I was teaching outside before I got to GolfTEC, I felt like my credibility relied on them hitting one better shot. And I think honestly, you can't grade me on one swing. I mean, you've been doing this wrong for 30 years, and you think one swing later we're going to have good results? We might, but the odds are probably stacked against us that it's not going to be pretty right away, and you're going to hit it poorly. And I would rather be inside and have you develop the movement pattern and get it closer to where it needs to be to produce the right path face than be outside with you losing confidence in my ability as a coach. And there is a point in time we're going to have to go see ball flight at some point in time. But right now, in the early stages of really rebuilding your movement pattern, I don't want you to see ball flight. It's going to be much faster for our learning curve. It's funny too. This is one obviously I'm pretty passionate about, but I think it was Swing the Club Head. Was it? It wasn't Percy Boomer. Who was the guy's? Ernest Jones was the guy's name. He talked about one of the most effective ways to start students. And this was a book written, I think, in the 30s or 40s. He said one of the best ways to start students was indoors. And there were pictures of him teaching his students indoors. So I love this question. It's a great one. And now, fast forward 15 years or from when we first started at GolfTEC, now my answer is pretty simple. That's why I've got foresight, to show us the ball flight. Right. So I don't have that long-winded answer there again. I hope that answers the question, though.
No,
I'd encourage you. I'll say one more thing, John, on this one. One of the things I've been very lucky to be able to travel around to a lot of sections and do speaking engagements and education events and PGM schools and different clubs around the country. And one of the trends I see now more and more and more and more are clubs building an indoor place. Obviously, you guys are lucky in Southern California. You probably don't need it. But on a hot day in the desert, I might want to be in 70 degrees in sunshine versus 110 and sunny. I see it, though, around the country. I was at Muirfield Village last fall for a little bit, and they had spent the last couple of years working on an indoor teaching academy for their members, and they're pros, quite frankly. So for the northern environments, I think it's a trend that we're seeing really begin to be embraced by everybody. Maybe not everybody, but a lot more people. And it's funny too. I've been lucky to go to Japan and Korea, and met a lot of people over in Korea that have never played golf, but call themselves golfers because they play screen golf. And the technology of measuring what's happening at high speeds has gotten so much better, and the simulators have gotten so much more accurate that I think people's aversion to playing indoors is starting to go away here in America. Not quite as much as it is internationally, but definitely seeing some progress there.
You had talked about it. You mentioned it earlier. What does the TEC stand for in the GolfTEC name?
Great question. Technique. It goes back to our founding of the company. We believe that people will play their best golf if they have fundamentally sound technique, properly fit equipment, and are in good physical and mental condition. So technique, equipment, and conditioning, which has a nice, obviously, GolfTEC as a name. Obviously, then there's some tech. Everyone thinks it's the technology component, that we're very into technology, and it certainly is a nice little side benefit of that. But yeah, technique, equipment, conditioning.
Okay, I don't have any other further questions that have come in. Last call for questions. I want to thank Andy Hiltz for his time and preparation in this morning's presentation. Obviously, it's very relevant for all of us in the instruction side of the business, and I want to commend you on one comment you made about the ability of you to sell yourself as a student to the lesson that takes place outdoors. Is you need them to hit one good shot in order to validate what you're trying to get them to do, and in that scenario, seeing the ball flight actually becomes a large deterrent. And I had heard that before and had forgotten about it, and it certainly is true. The ball can become a huge distraction, particularly when teaching beginning golfers. But
yeah,
and thank you very much.
At the end of the day, they got to get it airborne, right? That certainly is a absolutely huge key. I found it for me as a young instructor, particularly working with players who had 30 years of playing golf. Here I am, 23 years old, and I had a lot of challenges in getting them to buy into what I was telling them was correct. And certainly I don't think I gained a lot of long-term students when they hit 5, 6 bad shots when they were making a better swing, and it was a challenge. So anyway, thanks for the time. I really appreciate it. It was hopefully some couple good nuggets everybody got out of it, and hopefully we can again, like I said, in June, talk more about the business side of things and really what it takes to be successful as a instructor, or what we prefer to call them coaches. So thanks for the time.
Thank you very much, Andy. And as you mentioned, we do have another GolfTEC date on the Catalyst calendar, and I want to thank you for that as well. For all of today's participants, thank you for being on this morning. There will be, as usual, a 10-question quiz that will go out to all the attendees of this morning's presentation. A score of 70% or higher will earn you 1 MSR credit. Please take the quiz. When it comes out to you, return your quiz to Sharon Kerfman at pgahq.com, skerfman at pgahq.com. A score of 70% or higher will earn you 1 MSR credit. And we will be back on in 2 weeks. And want to thank you and hope to see you all then. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day.